for this. So today is, of course, May 14th, 2020, and this is our final review. As I mentioned before, like all reviews, my job isn't to stand here and tell you what I think is important. It is to help you figure out what it is that you don't understand and need some assistance with. So I will happily answer any procedural questions or any other questions, or if you need, we can even talk a little bit about what's going to be happening in the fall, because I know that is news that dropped the past couple days. So at this point, it's all yours. I'll open up the chat window. You can speak, you can type, whatever you're comfortable with, but I am now here for you.
What news just happened about fall?
So yesterday, the day before, the district decided that any class that can be completed online will be online. So they're going to try to go, while not fully online, for the fall. The fall expectation is that most, if not all, classes will be online. They will not be starting campus. Things that cannot be taught online. And we actually fall into the category of classes that can be taught online. But there are some clinical classes like nursing classes, some tech classes, some fine arts classes, things that literally cannot be taught online. May get some exceptions. So there may be some exceptions for limited availability. Labs technically can be done online. You can do your microscope stuff, the histology stuff. There's PhysioX. There's some other lab simulators we are looking at incorporating starting this summer and then continuing all into the fall as well. So while it is not equivalent, it is consistent enough with what the expectations are that, yeah, the expectation is that we will be online starting in the fall. There is talk about, like I said, possibly doing some labs online, things along those lines. Maybe online open labs or things along those lines. The main concern right now is the HVAC system, the spacing issues, all of those things that come with being in an enclosed space for a prolonged period of time. So those are decisions that have not been fully made yet. But anything that can be online is going to be online, and that includes A&P. Even if you're not able to come on models, one of the things that the A&P is also looking at as well is we are hoping to increase our bank, have our own bank of images of our models. I know we have been taking, hopefully you've been taking good advantage of the CRC site, but CRC doesn't necessarily have everything that we have. And so several of the instructors and myself included are working on trying to collect all of the model images and appropriate images so that all the instructors will be able to share that. And then ultimately we can make a database that would be available for students to be able to access as well. The final exam, as stated, is going to be 100 multiple choice questions. You will have 100 minutes to answer all of those. They will all be presented at once, so it'll be a similar format to what you're seeing with your lecture exams right now. There will be some labeling type of activities. Like I said, it's all multiple choice questions, but there will be that. One of the issues, I think it's more of a Mac issue, so I want to make sure that that is clear. It seems like not everybody is necessarily taking advantage of the tools that are available to you. On the tab on the left-hand side while you were in the exam, there are tabs to increase and decrease the magnification of the image. So if you need to increase the size of an image to see what something is, use those buttons. Don't use the manual enlarge that you have in a Mac. I don't think it's as easy to do on the PC, so it seems like mostly Mac people are the ones that are having problems with that. There is also the whiteboard function that allows you to be able to have something that you can write notes and things like that on. Of course, do not use any outside external materials for doing those types of things. But so make sure you're doing that. But yes, that is the format for the final exam. It'll be 100 multiple choice questions, and you'll have 100 minutes to complete it. And it covers everything we've covered since the beginning of this class. I guess that's it for the final review. Next question, what do you guys got?
So I was looking at the final concepts, the list that you gave us,
Mhm.
and on the bottom it says that the content is dependent on what we cover in class. So we didn't
Notice
cover
those are
special ed.
exactly. Those asterisks are specifically for the autonomic nervous system and for the sensory information. So clearly we did not get into any of the sensory information, so there will be no sensory information on the final exam. And our autonomic was limited. We didn't get to cover quite as much as I normally would have liked to cover. So we are only responsible for the autonomic stuff that we covered, and there will not be any sensory stuff on the final exam. So those were specific for those two sections, because again, normally when I post that during the normal semester, and again, that's just my final review from the normal semester, so it seemed, worthwhile to put it up just as a reminder for you guys.
Uh-huh.
But the short version is you're responsible for everything. But like even in the best of circumstances, when we're on campus, we tend to run late with this part, and usually I get it. If I'm lucky, I get a day and a half for the sensory stuff. But more often than not, I get a day, and occasionally I get half a day. And so again, even during the normal semester, how much we're able to cover of it is somewhat limited. And then clearly, because of the loss of days that we had in this, and all the other disruption and everything else, the transition and everything that went along with that, we didn't get to any sensory stuff. So obviously none of that will be on the final.
Okay, perfect. I just want to make sure.
Yep, no, I appreciate you asking. Yeah, for those of you who have trouble finding it, the final review, and again, like I said, that was not written specifically for this semester. That's just something I normally post during the normal semester, but it is a good reminder of all the big major concepts. But the short version is basically if you learned it in this class, you are responsible for it online. On the final. The way I see it is, 50% of the information should be aha information that we've used so many times that it's second nature, information that was important enough that it was second nature. Like calcium makes cells do wonky things, or things along those lines. And then there will be some specific details. As I mentioned, there's some processes where you'll be ordering the steps of the process. And for this final, again, that's different from what we normally see on a lecture exam, because normally if I have steps to a process, I'm asking you that process question. But there will be some images. So you may see an image of a bone, and you may have to identify a bone feature, or you may see an image of the skin and need to identify some structure in there or something along those lines. I wouldn't say it's a big portion of the exam. And again, what you got to remember is that with this format, everybody's exams are going to be random. So one person may get no labeling questions, somebody else might get 6. Right? So there's no way for me to know exactly how many you will have, but there could be some. Same thing with the process questions. Some of you may have 3 of those where you have to put the steps in order. Some of you may have none of those. It's the randomness of it is something that I don't like, but unfortunately is the nature of this type of format. How deep is the level of details for the questions? Like I said, about 50% should be aha information, but 30% should be stuff that is, you have to fire a synapse or 2 to think about. And 20% is about what, things where you have to actually think about. Again, one of the advantages of a multiple choice exam is that you don't have to pull the information out of the ether. So you're not recalling the information, you're recognizing the information. And recognizing it should be an easier process. Now, the one downside of this is with multiple choice questions, you have to be careful. They are often worded in a nature that is tricky by nature. And because these are tricky by nature, you have to make sure that you read them correctly, because you misread that one word and you're going to misinterpret the question, and they're going to have that trap answer there for you. But yeah, the level of detail, there can be a higher level of detail necessary for this, simply because you do not have to pull the information out of the ether. You just have to recognize the correct answer. And so that should be an easier process. Remember also for the final, you have a shorter period of time. I'll be honest, many instructors are holding their students to the 2-hour normal final range for their taking of the exams. I'm, because of the format of this, not as comfortable with that. Although I will warn you, if you take me in the fall or if you take me during the summer, because those classes are online and starting online, the timing restrictions will be much more restrictive. But You're not getting the extra time. So it will just be during the class time. So you will have to complete it between noon and 4:30, which is the normal time of our class, or technically 4:35. And remember, leave yourself 100 minutes, because it's a little over an hour and a half to complete it, because that's about how long it should take. Well, that's how long you have. It's not how long it should take. It should be quick. It shouldn't take you a minute a question to go through all these questions. So time should not be an issue for anyone. So as I mentioned before, and again, now that I haven't quite finalized the exam yet, but the way I see it is that this class is divided up into 5 main sections, right? We had our, introduction, anatomical terminology, homeostasis, all of those types of things, and then up through cells. Then we had tissues and the integumentary system. Then we had bones, then we had muscles, then we had the nervous system. So if you think about it, with 100 questions, I'd split about 20% for each of those 5 sections. Now, it may not be perfect. One of the sections, like for instance, skin and integumentary system, tissues and integumentary system, although there's a lot of material there, maybe it's only 18 questions. Maybe muscles, because there was so much information, is 21, right? Maybe nervous system, because we just did it, is 18 or something like that. So it will be, each section will have 18 to 22 questions. And if you think about it, some of those sections had, 2 chapters, some of them had 3 chapters. So, and again, not every chapter is equally important. So some may only have if there's 3 chapters in a section, one may only have 5 questions selected from it. The other 2 may have like 8 for both of them or something like that, and so then that would be 21 total for that section. And again, I'm just throwing those numbers out randomly. There isn't a section that's actually like that. I don't actually remember, and like I said, I haven't finalized it anyway. But I think approximately 20 questions per of those 5 sections should be good. And there, I guarantee there will at least be 3 questions per chapter that we were responsible for. I don't know how much more than that. Again, I think if you think about it, I think there were 14 chapters, 13 or 14 chapters. So that works out to something like 7 or 8 questions per chapter. It's not quite that straightforward, because again, some chapters had a lot more information, some chapters had a lot less information in them. Chemistry, for instance, we didn't cover the first half because that's what you needed to get into it. So that's probably a section that would have less, whereas like I said, muscle physiology could easily be a section where we had more. But I think the broadest sense, 20 questions, around 20 questions per section is probably the best way to think of it. Well, remember, bone formation is how we form a bone. So that would actually be endochondral ossification and intramembranous ossification. Then once we form those bones, then we need to grow those bones from that as well. So yeah, so we would talk about, so don't forget about, when we talk about forming bones, that's endochondral and intramembranous ossification. But yeah, growing in width and length and repair, those are also physiological processes you would need to know as well. Oh, I missed a question. Lab and lecture exam 5. If I get them completed in time, I will post them for you so that you have the opportunity to take a look at them. I have just had a chance to start them, so because I'm still not finished with the 2 final exams for both classes, so I haven't gotten too far in the grading. In fact, I think I have 4 lab exams graded, and that's as far as I've gotten so far. I've also, because of the decision to go online, there have been a tremendous number of meetings this week that I've had to take part in, and so that has been delaying things as well. If I get it done, I will post it for you so that you have the information, because then again, like I said, it can help you to make an educated decision on what you hope to be able to accomplish with the final exam. However, as I've often said since the very beginning of the semester, reviewing your previous exams is a poor way to study for the final. Because if you think about it, the previous exams are just a small survey, a small section of the information that you are responsible for. Clearly, all the information from a section does not make it onto that exam. So if you focus just on the material that's on the exam, you won't be very successful on the final exam, because there's going to be so much more. The information you're responsible for is so much broader than that. But again, I want you to be able to make those decisions. However, if honestly, regardless of whether I'm able to post them or not, as I've said before, I will post the grades on Canvas before I make them final, so that if you end up in the C range, because I know that's the magical number that everybody hates, I want you to aim for that B. And if you get there, great. If you fall short and end up with the C, then remember you can contact me by email and I can remove your final exam. And typically by removing your final exam score, that is sufficient to drop people down to a D so that they'd be able to take it again. Remember, C is considered a passing grade. And if you pass this class with a passing grade, you are not allowed to retake it. So if you want to move on to 431 and you're happy with that C, then I can do that. Then great. But if you get that C, if you end up falling in the C and you don't want it, then we can drop it down to a D so that you have the opportunity to take the class again. Now remember, unfortunately, our final is the 19th, which is the final day of the semester. So if you decide to run that gamut, you will lose the opportunity to do the excused withdrawal. So after taking these past exams, if you don't think you're going to be able to get there, then like I said, then I would encourage you to take that excused withdrawal now. Remember, if you get a D or if you get the excused withdrawal, both of those go away when you retake the class. Now, under normal circumstances, and again, it depends from semester to semester, some schools, and from school to school, some schools, look like a W more than a D or vice versa or something along those lines. However, what I would say is, since everybody knows what's happened this semester with the pandemic, I don't think any school is going to look poorly on a D if you were able to come back and replace it with an A or B at a later date. No, I will not be opening the previous exams. As I said, looking at the previous exams is a crappy way to study for the finals. So you guys had the opportunity to look at those things after they were released, after they were graded, and they've been closed now. And like I said, there's no point in looking at those because, again, I didn't pull the multiple choice questions from those exams. May one or two of them end up on your final test bank? Possibly. Again, I didn't purposely avoid them. But usually, if you think about it, the things that were normally the essay questions are the things that are now the multiple choice questions. So there isn't a lot of overlap. And again, the exams are a small subset of the information. So it's not a conducive way to study for the final. So I see no point of dealing with the logistics of releasing the exams so people can see them before the final. Typically, the final is not curved. It's 100 multiple choice. But again, this is a brand new format doing it online. So I am going to withhold that decision until I see what the results are. If after the final exam, the average for the final exam is a 52, then clearly something went wrong and then I would curve it in that case. And conversely, if the average is a 92, then I may curve it down as well. So, well, I completely, because of this unique format, I refuse to make any formal decisions on how the final will be used. Because again, it is going to replace one of your lecture scores. I said that, I have agreed to that like I did at the beginning of the semester. But I need to see the final exam scores before we decide if they need to be adjusted.
So there's no way to retake the course. So like if you got a C in the class, like you can't retake it whatsoever.
You cannot retake it at any Los Rios school. So that means Cosumnes River, that means Folsom Lake, that means American River, that means Sac City. You can go to Woodland or Yuba or Sierra College or any school outside of the district and take it again. However, well, and again, this is the first semester, so it doesn't matter as much. If you take it, for instance, at Sierra College and Woodland, both of those divide the classes differently. Both of those do anatomy separately and physiology separately. So anatomy and physiology together is equal to 430 and 431. However, 430 and anatomy are not equal. So we do it sequentially. We do the anatomy and physiology together because it makes more sense. The problem with that is it's restrictive from an administrative standpoint. Taking anatomy and physiology separately is horrible as a student because you say you're taking an anatomy class, but they're obviously going to talk some function to you. Otherwise, you're just memorizing a list of words. If you take physiology, obviously you're learning some anatomy because how can you talk about how something functions if you don't know what the parts are? So typically what happens if you take anatomy and physiology separately is that the first one is really, really hard and the second one is easier. The advantage from an administrative standpoint is students can take either one first. So it's easier to get butts in seats. Teaching it the way we teach it with anatomy and physiology together makes more sense from a teaching standpoint, but there is that administrative issue that we have that huge bottleneck for 430 that all of you fought through to get into this class. But so yes, if you complete it with a C is considered a passing grade, then you cannot retake a C at any Los Rios school. So if you get a C at any of the schools in Los Rios, you cannot retake a C. But again, depending on your program, for some of you, that doesn't matter. Many programs have a 3-point GPA for the 2 anatomy and physiologies in the micro class. So if you get a C in this, you get an A in 431. And again, I won't say a lot of times, but occasionally that happens. Students struggle at the beginning of 430, but then they learn how to be successful. They finally get the grade they want, and get in stride and end up with their C. But then they're able to hit the ground running in 431 and typically can be much more successful. So I've had, a handful of students who get a C in 430 and get an A in 431. It's definitely possible. And then you just need your B or better in micro and you still get your 3.0 GPA. So it is definitely possible to do that if you can learn the lessons from this class. But if you learned it a little too late to make up the grade, but again, those are all the decisions that you have to make of what you think is going to be best for you.
Can you still get, I think for nursing, it's 3.5. So if you get
So what I would say is different programs have different criteria. So again, it's a math issue. The general micro 440, I think that's the number. The general micro is a 4-unit class. So an A in 431, a C in 430, and a B in, and an A in micro doesn't give you a 3.5, right? But if you take the bacteriology one, that is a 5-unit one, so that can make a difference for helping to bump that way. So, but again, every program has different, criteria, especially since most programs are now going more merit-based. If you have a 3-point, you get a certain number of points. If you have 3.5, certain number of points, 4.0, certain number of points. So again, with many of the ones with the point system, there is a minimum, but the better the grades, the better your chances. But again, most nursing programs are different. So don't take my word for it. Don't take the counselors on our campus's word for it. If you're interested about a nursing program, contact their counselors because their counselors will tell you exactly what you need to do to get into their program. But every program is going to be different. Is that it?
You pretty much answered all of my questions.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that. How about everybody else? Anybody else have any questions? As always, if you think of something between now and the beginning of class, you are welcome to email me, and I will happily answer all of those. As I expected, a lot of these questions were more procedural in nature, and that's kind of the case there. There's only so much that I can, cover with the content because it's everything. So, all right, well, then I guess we'll go ahead and call this a review. Again, I will post this, at least for the general information that is there. Yes, what about the course retake?
Sorry, just too long to type. So I just called the office, American River College,
Okay.
and they said that there is a form to fill out. If you get a C, let's say, in the class, and you want to still retake the course, you're still able to retake it if you fill out a form and the office approves it. So
Yes, okay,
Sorry.
let's discuss that. You are absolutely correct. There is a form that you can fill out and submit to the dean to try to retake a C.
Mm-hmm.
When I first started teaching at Los Rios, which was 14, 15 years ago, my first class at Sac City, when I was teaching at Sac City, I had a student in my class who was taking 430 for the 8th time. She had gotten waivers, she'd gotten the approvals, she had done all those types of things, and was able to take it 8 times to try to complete it. Then what happened is we had our economic downturn that happened in the early 2000s. And what happened is the way that they fund us for students changed slightly. So what happens is the university gets money based on butts in seats. How many students are in the seat in a classroom? And especially in a class like ours that has a lot of FTE, we put a lot of hours in but have a few number of students, those are valuable butt seats. The problem is that if you pass with a C, you can, since you have a passing grade, the school no longer gets paid for you if you retake that class. So that decreased the motivation for the administrators to allow those forms that you fill out. And in fact, since then, I have never seen one of those forms approved. The fact that this pandemic is going to lead to yet another economic downturn, and some of the information coming from the chancellor is we could see as much as a 15% decrease in funding next semester in the fall, this coming fall, and for the coming year. The likelihood that you would get that form approved is probably non-existent. I mean, you've got the perfect excuse. During the middle of the semester, we had a pandemic and you had to go home and take a class in a way that you weren't asked to take the class. But I think that's what they tried to allow with the excuse withdrawals, is to give those people with those difficulties the out. I can't imagine that they would approve any of those forms for the fall if you get the C. So yes, technically there is a form that you can prove out and turn into the dean, but in the past 10 years, I haven't seen one of those be approved. So technically there is a path, but in all likelihood, it would not be accepted. And it's unfortunately economic. That is why I offer the opportunity to drop it to a D. Right? I'm not doing that because I feel good. I appreciate the bind that students have been put in because of this economic hardship situation. And so I feel that that is slightly unfair, but I understand the reasoning behind it. But that's why if you end up with a C and want to retake the class, then have me drop it to a D, and then you can retake the class. The only advantage of getting the C is you get to move on to 431. But if you're going to retake 430 anyway, then take it first, because then you're going to be armed with so much better information to help you to be so much more successful in 431 when you get there. You don't want to take 430, get a C, then take 431, and then turn around and have to take 430 again. That doesn't benefit you the same way. So there's no advantage to not taking 430 immediately after this. So being able to drop the score to a D is my way of allowing those students to have the accommodation that they need to help them to be successful.
When would we know whether or not we're getting officially a C?
I will post the grades as soon as I have everything graded. And then typically I will do that, and then you will have 2 or 3 days to then make that decision. Once the grades are posted on Canvas, and you should all have your notifications set up, but I'll be sending up in the announcement in the email that it is the case. And so again, like if I release the grades on a Wednesday, then usually like Wednesday morning, then usually Friday afternoon is when I make it. Or if I release them on a Friday, then Monday evening is when I post the grades. So usually I have 2 or 3 days to review it, to contact me. If you have any questions or concerns, or if there's any errors. That's the other thing too, right? Hey, I see that, these 2 homeworks were missing or something along those lines, right? So that way you have the opportunity to ask any questions, see where you have finished in the class, and make any decisions before I make the grades official. Because it's a lot harder to change the grades after the fact. So that's why I'll post them first on Canvas so that you have an opportunity to see. And like I said, ideally, the end of the semester, or when our grades are due, is like, I think June 1st or June 2nd or something along those lines. Why that isn't considered the end of the semester, I don't know. Again, maybe it's an administrative thing or a financial thing or whatever it is. But unfortunately, you won't have your grades before you have to make the decision on the excused withdrawal. So that's a decision you have to make now. If you stay, you're getting a grade. and then just you can help to determine what that is. Jeff will, if you did do the open lab, Jeff will be sending me those. I know he's been still doing some open labs, and so if you've been coming to those, he's been keeping track of those hours as well. So yes, so if he will be providing me with that information, and that will be in, if you did the Science Success Center, that will be in your participation grade, which again is not extra credit. It is a grade 20 out of 20, but anybody who's still here hanging out gets their full 20 points of participation for sticking it out. So you'll get that. So yes, those things again are not purposely not been put in your grades because I don't want you counting on them. Try to get the grades you want without them, but if you fall a little bit short, hopefully those things will help to boost to put you over.
So what if we ended up getting enough to push our grade to barely like a B? Is an 80% or like an 81% considered a B?
Yes, in community colleges, there are no pluses and minuses. So if you get 80% of the points, you get a B. However, if you get 79.8% of the points, you get a C. Because again, I've curved grades, you're getting extra credit, you're getting participation, I'm letting you replace a lecture score with your final. If you've done all those things and with all that assistance, you still didn't get 80% of the points, then you don't deserve a B. Because without all of that assistance, you wouldn't have even been close.
So you're saying that you drop our final score only after
No.
we've already taken it, or?
I don't drop any scores. All tests matter. However, to reward you for learning, you can use your final exam to replace your lowest lecture score. So if your lowest lecture score is a 50 and you end up with a 75 on the final, then that 75 on the final will replace the 50. So basically what will happen is you will get 25 points added to your overall score. I don't remove the previous exam. The previous exam is still there, but I basically bring it up to your final. So basically you'll see actually there's a column of additional points from replacing your lowest lecture score with the final. And in that column, in that situation, you would have 25. All right. If your lowest lecture score is a 70 and you get a 68 on the final, I'm not going to dock you 2 points, right? So, so obviously I wouldn't replace it in that situation. But if your final is higher than your lowest lecture score, and again, for some people, their lowest lecture score is a 68 and their final is a 70. So they get 2 points. But there are plenty of people whose lowest lecture score, maybe it was the first one we came online or something along those lines or something, or their first test when they didn't appreciate it. They may have a 47 as their first lecture score, their lowest lecture score. And if they get an 80 on the final, then they're getting 33 points added to their score.
No, my question was more for what you were saying for us for how you would drop the final to bring us down to a D.
Yes.
So are we allowed to take the final first and then do that?
Yes, you will. Again, I will post. Let's talk about how the normal semester goes, because the thing that throws a monkey wrench in all of this is the excused withdrawal. So let's ignore the excused withdrawal. This semester and every semester for the past 10 years, what I will do is I will post your grades, your final grade, after you've taken the final, after you've gotten your extra credit added in and the participation and everything. After every single final point is added in, everything is added in, your final numbers crunched grade will be posted onto Canvas. And so you'll see what your percentage is, you'll know what your grade is, okay? At that point, you will then have 2 to 3 days to then decide if you want to take the grade, if there's any questions about the grade that you got or any of the numbers that are in there. And then also if that point, if after all of that you fall out with a C and you decide you don't want that C, then we can remove the final, we can remove the extra points you got from the final. And in most cases, so basically it would be like having that 0. Again, think of it this way. The way I look at it and the reason I do it this way is if I was able to get your tests back to you and you saw your scores and you saw with that score, well, even if I got 100% on this final, I'm not going to be able to get a B in the class and I don't want a C, then you could make the conscious decision to not take the final, take the final, get your D and be able to replace it, right? If you had your tests ahead of time and could do the math, then you could figure that out all for yourself, correct? So I'm just allowing you to do that after the fact because I likely won't have your exams graded in time. Since you won't get your grades back in time and you can't make that knowledgeable decision as to whether or not you should take the final exam, then you do that. And the benefit of this is this way you actually get to take the final exam and see if you can get there. And then if not, then you can retroactively go back and not take it so that you get the 0. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Excellent. Anything else? Well, it's going. It's interesting. There's advantages and disadvantages to having 2 teenagers at home with you. First, they entertain each other a lot, so that's very, very helpful. They also, unlike little kids, don't require my constant presence. However, teenage kids tend to be much more social than than little kids are, and so the demands to see friends, to do things with friends, to be able to stare at friends across a window is exhausting. And so thank God for TikTok, because that's the only thing keeping one of my kids busy. So that keeps her out of my hair. But and their school is interesting. High school and middle school online is an interesting process as well. So I'm surviving. Everybody, oh, it was just me, dog, is happy and healthy. So hush. Everybody is happy and healthy, so we're doing well. And I hope everybody is happy and healthy with you guys as well.
What kind of dog?
She is a mutt. Dalmatian, Cocker. Sprinkles, come here. You see her? That's my dog.
Yeah.
Hey, Sprinkles. She's my old lady. How old are you? You're like 10, 9, something like that. Yeah,
Aww.
my bodyguard.
Yeah.
Yep. But that's it. All right. Any other questions? Anybody else want to show off their dog?
No, but if you want to see the chickens, they got bigger.
Sure. Here, I'll close my stop sharing the screen so that we can all see the videos.
We actually just got more chicks today.
Because you didn't have enough?
Well, I want a lot of eggs.
Okay. You gonna sell them on the black market as the quarantine continues?
No, but those are the babies.
Wow.
And those are the big ones.
Wow, they're getting really huge.
Yeah. The like tan ones, those are going to be, I think, like 30 inches
Oh, wow.
tall, so they're going to be big.
Now, are they all females or,
Yes.
or can you even tell at this age?
Yeah, you can, the pompadour ones, those sometimes you have a hard time telling whether they're male or female. But I got all females because I'm not allowed a rooster in my part of town.
That makes sense. Nobody wants to hear the crowing.
No, I don't even want to hear the crowing. But yeah, those little ones, we just got those today.
Yeah, exactly.
And this one, are you okay, buddy? Okay, just making sure. But yeah, so those are my chickens.
All righty. Well, if there aren't any other questions and nobody else wants to show off their pets, then I guess we will call it a semester. Again, please feel free to email me. And then good luck on your final. Remember, it has to be completed between noon and 4:35. You're not getting the 2 hours before. You're not getting the hour and a half after like normal. So make sure you complete it during that time. I hope to have it finished today or tomorrow. I'll post it just so you can see the information, but obviously it will be locked until next week. So when I get that done and completed and I get it tested properly, then I'll get that just as the reminder so you can see the time range and the information and everything else along with that. And I think I've gotten everything else. I'll have to double check on the grading of the homeworks, but I think I got all the homeworks graded and input as well. So as I get things graded, I'll post them. As I get everything else done, I'll get it. So, and again, if you have any questions or comments or concerns, continue to contact me. All right, guys, take care. Have a great summer. Good luck to you on the final. Good luck to you on the rest of the academic career. Who knows, maybe I'll see some of you next semester in the fall. And hopefully I don't see any of you during the summer. Even if you weren't successful, don't take this during the summer. You see how horrible this class is now. It's going to be twice as fast and half as much time to study it. Don't take it in the summer. Please don't take this in the summer. All right. Take care, guys. Bye.